By day, you work at a job that simply doesn't satisfy you. It's likely not a career, but simply a job. It pays the bills. It puts food on the table. But it doesn't light a fire inside of you. It doesn't fill you with a sense of, I can do it. It just is. But then there's the nighttime, when the rest of the world winds down. In the late, dark hours of the evening, a creative fire gets stoked inside you. The wheels of your brain kick in, the ideas start flowing. You feel a sense of excitement and adventure. You're doing what you know you're meant to do. And yet, there's a loneliness to it all. You work in isolation while others sleep. You wish you had people to bounce your ideas off of, a shoulder to lean on when something goes wrong. Others to applaud your achievements, no matter how big or small. People to encourage you to follow your dreams and goals. Solopreneurs, dreamers, builders, creators, resellers, makers, problem solvers. Like-minded people who want something better. We're here, and we're ready to listen and to help. Welcome to the Night Shift.
Good evening, everybody. How is everybody doing out there? Thanks so much for stopping by the diner and joining me for another evening on the Night Shift. Hope everybody has had themselves a good week out there. Good week. What am I saying? It's been like 48 hours since the last time I saw you. This is what I get when I get distracted, trying to look at comments at the same time I'm trying to. I can't walk and chew gum either. I've tried. All right, new toy for Zeke. We're going to try to give this to him and see if maybe I can convince him. Come here. Maybe if he's trying for food, he'll leave us alone this evening. And this will probably be the new project that we'll have to try every episode. What will distract Zeke this time? And hope for the best. Stu, thank you so much for stopping in. Appreciate it. Glad to have you here. Miss Regina, always lovely to see you. Always glad to have you here. Thank you so much. Appreciate folks coming by. We're in a bit of a tough time slot, but that's sort of the idea of the Night Shift. For those that have the time, it's a great time to be here. If you got to be in bed, you got to be in bed. We could all use a little bit of that. So, little catch up on what I've been up to the last 48 hours, which been focusing a lot on my upcoming daytime vacation from the day job to focus on the publishing for the 16th through the 22nd. Been trying to catch up on emails. I don't know if you folks are like the rest of me. No, if the rest of you are like me, boy, let me just have a little bit more of that vodka that I was trying to hold off on. Okay, that's better. If you're like me and you are surrounded by emails that you feel like you're never going to get to the bottom of, that's kind of where I found myself today. Was trying to clear out emails. I have a goal of getting to inbox zero someday. No idea if it'll ever happen. No idea if I'll ever see it, but it's absolutely a goal. So today was very much about trying to get caught up with that kind of stuff, because tomorrow it's back to the day job and back to struggling at nighttime to try to build this company and have it go strong and be my main source of income. And some of you out there watching this may feel the exact same struggle. Stu says, just delete everything. As much as I would love to, I would love to do the nuclear option and just press that button and just have it all vanish. That would be ideal. But I think it might cause me a problem or two down the road. I have done that before. Usually what I do is I try to not keep any more than 2 years worth of emails in my inbox. Of course, Misty Media has only been around since November of 2024. So for me, it's if I get rid of 2 years worth of email, I won't have anything left. So, but I've got something like 600 unread emails in my inbox, and you know, if I haven't read them by now, I probably never am going to. And I don't know how much of it is garbage and how much of it is stuff I probably should have answered by now. Um, Regina says I've done the nuclear reset on the emails before. It's so tempting. It really is. Although, or weren't you like freaked out though that something really important was gonna disappear in the process? Um, you find well, I guess if it was that important, they'll email you back and be like, "Hey, why didn't you ever respond to that email?" Oh, my computer had a malfunction. The malfunction was between this finger and the delete button, and that's where it all went horribly south for a short period of time. So I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about individuality in the publishing business, and I imagine it's the same in many other businesses. But when I get submissions from authors, it's very, very common for them to include a query letter. And for the most part, I'm okay with query letters. Excuse me. Ugh. I'm fine with query letters because I think it's a great way to introduce the book to you and introduce the author to you. But there's this thing that is consistently taught to authors that if they're going to submit a book for consideration, they have to also submit a list of comparable books. So, Regina says, I figure if I hadn't read or done anything with it, it's like the clothes in your closet will never be worn again in time to go. You got to remember, I'm a guy, so like I'm still wearing stuff from like my college days because I just don't know how to go out and buy clothes. Um, I hate the way I look at everything and nothing feels good against the skin. So I tend to wear the exact same things over and over again for, 10, 15 years at a time. But query letters, I've got these authors that are telling me, oh, well, my style is similar to so and so author and so author. And, my take on that has always been, well, if I wanted so and so author, I would just go to so and so author and ask them to write something for me. Um, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an author's individual voice. How do they tell the story? I always tell people it's like back when Twilight came out and Twilight was all the rage. The next thing you knew, you had a gazillion vampire stories and vampire romances coming out on the market. And obviously most of them weren't any good, but it was everybody trying to capitalize on the same idea. Um, and everybody thought they could write the next Twilight or they could write the next Harry Potter. Oh my God. When Harry Potter came out and became a hit, everybody was convinced they could write a Harry Potter. So as a publisher, you get these query letters and it's, well, I write like this person or I write like that person. And it makes you wonder, at what point did somebody tell them that it wasn't okay to say in a query letter, hey, I'm my own person, I'm my own author, I have a voice that's completely different from anybody else's. And what you have to remind authors, and this goes for anybody who has any kind of business, is you are your brand. Tooch, good evening, Tooch. When you're setting up a brand, whether and this goes for if you're an author, you're still a brand, right? People, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Gee, I can't wait to find out what the latest book published by Penguin Publishing is," right? They wake up in the morning and say, "Gee, does Stephen King have something new coming out? Does John Grisham have something new coming out?" So the author is the brand. And it's no different for any other small business. Establishing yourself and making yourself successful is by that making that differentiation of what makes you different from everybody else. How do you stand out? And although you hear that a lot of people mistake that for I need to do something crazy or I need to do something that's just so unusual. And they don't think that it may be their own personality and their own individuality that comes through that is what's actually driving the interest in the business. So, if you look at the burger wars, right? You got Wendy's, you got McDonald's, you got Burger King. It's all burgers, right? It's all burgers, it's all French fries, it's all the different, they're all made essentially the same. Yeah, you got people that'll swear left and right on which one they approve. And I'm sorry, folks, for those of you that are in and out people, I don't get it. I just don't see the fascination. That's just me. But what you have to look at is what made those brands so individualized that they've been successful where so many other brands have come and gone. And it's because they've developed a personality for that brand. And that personality is what has driven them to success. McDonald's was the 5-cent burger, and then was the speedy burger. Nobody was making hamburgers on that almost assembly line kind of thing that McDonald's was doing. And Burger King attempted to do the same thing and then realized they kind of had to go in their own little direction, and they were doing things like creating the actual Burger King to compete with Ronald McDonald, and they created their own little neighborhood of people and things like that. Wendy's took another tactic after a while and focused on the simple things that Dave, the owner, cared about. And one of those big things was adoption, and that became a cornerstone. Wendy's became not as known for adoption as they were for their burgers, but it became a cornerstone of who they were. And it's one of those things that stood out as a differentiating factor. So if you're in a business where you've got lots of other people that are doing the exact same thing, standing out for that, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically about the marketing. Marketing is an aspect of it, but it's about determining what sets you apart from the other people on an individual basis. What do you bring to the table that's different than what other folks are doing? Then once you've decided that factor and what makes you different, then that becomes part of the marketing. But making that determination ahead of time is how you get to figuring out what that marketing is. So I've been hanging out a lot in the reseller community for the last 6 to 9 months, the YouTube reseller community, and a lot of what I do is observation. I'll sit in on auctions and I'll watch and see how people do things, how people say things. But then you also start picking up on what people's individual passions are. For some people, they know anything and everything about glass. Angela Isaacs is a great example of that. Unimagic. You want to know everything in the world about glass, you tune into them. That's what you're going to get. And even though lots of other people sell glass, there are very few people that can talk to it the way that Angela Isaacs and a couple other people do. And that's because that's part of their individual personality that they're bringing into it. They already have a genuine passion for that particular thing, and as a result, that passion comes through in what they're doing. And they don't even have to necessarily market that. It becomes such a regular part of the business that people automatically associate it with them. So now it becomes a thing of, well, gee, I'm really looking for XYZ. Oh, you know what? Here's that person that always seems to be an expert in that field, and that's why I follow them. Let me go see what they're doing and buy directly from them, because they know that you stand out from everybody else because that's where you excel. That's where your knowledge base is. That's where your passion is. If you don't have that individuality, and you see this a lot on Whatnot, Whatnot auctions are some of the most terrible things I've ever watched in my life. Um, they are like a desperate garage sale, um, with literally zero personality coming through, and I mean zero. Everybody is selling the exact same stuff. Everybody's hyper. Everybody's kind of yelling at the camera, and yelling at the people. I see I see people berating people, for not spending more on an auction item. And what I don't ever get a sense of is anybody that I would be like, "Oh, yeah, I would wanna come back and watch this person again," because they so clearly know everything about Funko Pops. They're talking up why it's a rarity, and there's none of that. Again, everybody there's I'm seeing very little individuality on that platform. As a customer, that doesn't make me wanna stick, right? There's this grassroots movement, and it's been on for a long time, right? Shop local. Um, don't give your Regina says you haven't been in the right whatnot sale. I guess I make a point of doing research on it, and I've been at it for uh, 6 to 9 months and whatnot, and they've just all been horrible sales. Um, I, I just have to turn them off. Um, so it's I want, as a buyer, I want to. Oh, we're talking about shop local. So I get it. There's no personality behind a big box retailer. I mean, in the early days, Amazon was a really great place to buy books. That's how they got their start, and then they became a jack of all trades, master of none. Right? Amazon is known for convenience, but that's not individuality. It's a factor, but it doesn't make you want to. There's enough people that are willing to boycott Amazon or not shop Amazon for lots of other reasons. But then you remember that there's this garden shop down the street from you in your neighborhood, and we'll call it Joe's Garden Shop. Why? Because it's the night shift and I don't have to be clever. Um, but Joe's Garden Shop, Joe's in your neighborhood. He knows what grows in your area. He understands what the soil is like, in your area. He understands that these flowers will bloom and these flowers will not. He understands that uh, uh, if you want to have a successful sun garden, then here's what you need to do. I mean, here in Vegas, where they rip up the soil. I mean, they rip up all the grass to try to save water, and xeriscaping is uh, kind of everything. We still have garden supply. We still have places that specialize in what you need to grow out here in the desert, and that's something that you can't get without having a business that's been individualized to focus on its neighborhood and its area, and what works in that neighborhood. Um, and that's really critical. That's something that you can't replace with a big box retailer. And so people talk about mom and pop shops, but what they're not really understanding is that what's impacting them and that desire to shop a mom and pop shop is that feeling of they know me, they know the area, they know the neighbor, they're part of the neighborhood. Um, they're the people that greet you by name because you go in there every time, and they get, every week, and they get to know you. Um, that's individuality, because if you walk into uh, you know Steve-O's Mexican cantina that has one location in your town, and he knows your order the minute you walk in the door, you're not going to get that same service when you go into Taco Bell that's serving tons and tons of people. Why? Because they're not designed to be an individual. They're designed to be a corporation with multiple locations, and it's fast and it's convenient. But what you find are that those fast food restaurants come and go. They'll one week they're there, the next week they're shut down and something else has popped up in its place. But darned if Steve-O's Mexican Cantina doesn't have something on their door that says something like celebrating 35 years of service to the neighborhood, right? And that's not by chance. That's not by, oh, well, we just simply make Mexican food and we sell it. It's because they have branded themselves as the neighborhood place, the place that knows its customers, the place that makes food that the locals want, that the locals like. They've looked at their menus, they've seen what people want, and they've altered their menu over time. They've added things, they've subtracted things, all based on what their customers in their particular area want. One of the things that I found really cool when Barnes and Noble was bought out by a British investor uh, and a British team was that the new CEO gave a lot of power back to the stores to go ahead and individualize what they carried for their particular location. So, one of the things I've always complained about is that when you walk into bookstores, the tables at the front are typically the same male white authors that you see everywhere else, or it's the same New York Times top 10, featured on the front table. And somebody could blindfold you and walk you into a bookstore, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the store you were in previously and the store you're in now, because it's essentially all of the exact same uh, all of the exact same uh, books, right? But then you find those niche little bookstores that specialize in something, right? Like there's a terrific one out of LA, uh, the Ripped Bodice, and they specialize in romance. That's all they do. Uh, there's a bunch of hello, Jennifer. Yes, we can see you, and I'm really glad to have you here. Thanks for stopping in. So like the Ripped Bodice is fantastic uh, for being able to be a bookstore that has chosen to be an individual and focus on romance, because now romance fans are going to check there first, right? Where does it make sense to check for a romance book? Maybe if you're looking for that fast convenience, you're looking at Amazon. But if you want somebody who truly knows their stuff about romance, then you're going to go to a person or a store that says, yes, this is what we specialize in. And so that's what Barnes and Noble has started empowering their store managers to do, is to start building up their sections, especially their local sections, but tailoring it to the local population. What does the local population want to see? Um, and so now no two Barnes and Nobles are exactly alike, because you're going to have that core product that each one carries, but now each store is going to have its own individual taste based on what the people want to see. It takes me back to my days at Waldenbooks way back in the early 90s, early and mid 90s, really, where it was the same thing, and we were allowed to have a core set of books that we had to carry at all times, and then whatever square footage you had left, you could tailor it to your local population. And when I took over a store in Brunswick, Georgia, and God help you that you never have to be in Brunswick, Georgia. It's in the bottom right corner of Georgia. It is 60 miles in any direction to a real city. Um, the only claim to fame really for Brunswick is that the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is there, which if you know like hot military guys the way I do, it wasn't necessarily a drawback. Um, but being able to look at, when I took over that store, there was no African American section. There was no Native American section. There was no LGBT section, um, and almost no books for that. But meanwhile, 6, 9 first year or in, I'm realizing that my community is looking for that stuff. That's all stuff that they want to buy and I don't have, because I'm trying, my corporate bosses are trying to make that store like every other store. So I went to my district manager and said, we need to there's a demand here that we need to address. And so they gave me the ability to reduce square footage of some other sections and build out these sections. And the one that truly went gangbusters was my African American section. I had started out with, I think, maybe 10 to 12 titles that I could not keep on the shelf. And so I would start deliberately doing research on what other authors were available and bringing them in, and those would start selling out. And we became known as a store that catered to a more diverse crowd. Um, because the Native American section turned out to be really popular in Brunswick. The LGBT section became a monster. Everybody wanted that. We were actually one of the only Waldenbooks to carry Playgirl. Um, there was one Advocate Men was another one. One of the very, very few Waldenbooks anywhere in the country that were that carried those magazines. Although Waldenbooks' policy had always been, if the magazine's in the distributor's catalog, you can bring it in if there's a demand, and there was, and it was, and you wanted to take care of your customer, and you wanted your customer to come back to you and remember you for what you specialized in. And the store grew, and and again, we became known as the diverse store, the store where no matter what kind of background you came from, there was a title there for you. So I wholeheartedly encourage that if you're in a business that lots of other people are in, figure out what it is of your personality, figure out what it is about your passion that you can bring in as a differentiator to what you do. And maybe it's something so like, I love that Regina wears hats all the time, often. And she has a lot of fun with it, switching it up. That's something that's stuck in my head, right? Like I that to me is memorable. That's something about Regina that talks about her sense of humor. Um, and that's not something you see anybody else do, because it's not something everybody else can do. Nobody else can be Regina. Nobody else can have that sense of whimsy in what she does. And you know when you see people talk in other chats about Regina, they talk about how fun she is, uh, how much fun it is to watch her show. And it's because she brings Tooch is the same way. If you're not laughing when you're watching a Tooch show, then clearly something's wrong with you. I mean, clearly something's wrong with Tooch, but clearly if you're not laughing during one of his shows, you're missing the fact that this is a genuinely nice guy who clearly has a heart of gold, and you just can't help want to tune in to watch him for that warmth that you aren't going to get from somebody else that is just there to sell stuff. And that comes through with every single episode he does, and that to me is again an example of that individuality. Nobody else can be Tooch. Nobody else can uh, nobody else has his style and his sense of humor. um, and I apologize for Nightbot, by the way. I got to get that thing to calm down. It's a brand new function I brought in for this, and I, you know, as we used to say in the South, bless his heart. He's just a little bit he's just a little bit wound up in trying to protect the channel, and I need to get him to calm down just a little bit. Um, so I'm curious, for those of you out there in the chat, I know looking at this, all of you are business owners. For everybody that's in here right now, I'm curious what you think what is it about your individuality that you bring to your business that you have found has helped to make you successful? Jennifer has a very interesting niche in that she sells, but she also um, uh, I'm missing. I'm The brain is not giving me the term. But she guides auctions. People bring her in to help them run their auctions, and she's got a talent for it. That's I mean, we nobody knows how she does it. Nobody knows how she keeps everything so organized and running so smoothly. But but I am curious for Regina, Tooch. Stu says my professionalism. So Stu, professionalism is kind of a wide topic. So what is it? What does that look like? What does that mean? Uh, when you say my professionalism, what is it about what you're doing? Tooch says fun and acceptance of all. I would agree with that. Um, I would 100% agree with that, Tooch. That uh, from what I've learned about you over time, and from what I've seen in your auctions, that's something that's just very consistent across all of your shows. You're always having fun, and you're always very kind to everybody. So, and that's not something, again, everybody does. Uh, Regina says tenacity, like a little pit bull, grabbing on that ankle. I'm not letting go. I will say you definitely have a never give up attitude. Um, never say die, um, which I love. Uh, I love that you genuinely care about what you do, but you genuinely care about the people you do it with, and just as much as you are making yourself successful, you go out your way to make sure other people are successful as well. And I think that's another reason why you have been so successful, is that uh, people see you as not just somebody selling to them, but somehow as a partner as well. Somebody who uh, wants them to have all the good stuff. Within myself, yes, the cheerleader pit bull. Boy, that just brings a mental image. I'm all of a sudden I'm picturing a pit bull in a cheerleader skirt with pom poms. Um, that is not a visual that probably should have just jumped in my head. Well, folks, the night shift is probably going to be shorter episodes for now. Uh, as we build the audience, we'll go a little longer. But for right now, I'm looking at keeping these shows probably to about a half an hour, as a way to check in on nights that we have guests in, which are coming. Uh, we will probably have an hour-long format. But for right now, looking to do 30 minutes. That's true. Tooch says, not many people can fill Johnny's shoes like Regina did today. Yeah, Regina's, you know, ask her to jump in at the last minute to cover, and she's like the uh, best host going. It's like, if she had been a stand-up comedian, Johnny Carson would have been getting her to fill in all the time when he needed to go. Regina's just rock solid. So yeah, the night shift will be roughly 30-minute episodes for the next couple weeks as we start building up. So hopefully that'll be good for everybody, for kind of some bite-sized advice. And but please, by all means, bring your questions, bring anything you're working on for your business, anything you want to discuss and try. Our email address is scrolling along the bottom there, the night shift at mistymedia.com. Let me know the kinds of things you'd like to see covered on the show, guests you'd like me to have. We're starting this channel from scratch. So we're happy to have any insight and input from everybody. It's the best way to grow the community. So for now, everybody, have yourself a really great night. We will be back on Friday, and I hope to see all of you back here in the diner then. Until then, good luck with anything you do in the daytime, and don't forget, some of the best stuff happens on the night shift.